Judas est en exil, victime de l'oppression et d'une grande servitude. Il habite au milieu des nations et il n'y trouve point de repos. Tous ses persécuteurs l'ont surpris dans l'angoisse. Les chemins de Sion sont dans le deuil, car on ne va plus aux fêtes. Toutes ses portes sont désertes, ses sacrificateurs gémissent, ses vierges sont affligées, et elle est remplie d'amertume. Ses oppresseurs triomphent, ses ennemis sont en paix, car l'Éternel l'a humilié à cause de la multitude de ses péchés. Ses enfants ont marché captifs devant l'oppresseur.
Why does history's largest genocide, the deportation of millions of Africans during 400 years, spark such little emotion of? Because when they departed from the African coast, their identity was taken away from them all. From them all? No. 20,000 Congolese were deported to the French West Indies, keeping their identities. Among them, 10,525 were deported in Martinique. Here is their story.
My mother was Jean Bibayen Tula, a daughter of Lucilia Lubaye Kimbi, who is my grandmother. And my grandmother, the daughter of Augustine Kimbi, who arrived here as engaged. Looking at his teeth, they said he was 20 upon his arrival.
Since the years 1500 until 1900, a trade provides the plantation of the European colonies located in the Americas with men, women and children. The European colonies located on plantation mainly cultivate cotton, banana, sugarcane, coffee, and other products with a high financial value in this time. Those deported Africans were deprived with their last and first names. They became possessions, properties that could be moved. They were not listed in any administration, and their ethnical origins vanished with time in most of the colonies. Upon the slavery abolition, which officially takes place in 1948, slaves of the West Indian plantations are liberated. They refused to keep on working in these conditions the French colonizers had been imposing, and started deserting the lands of their former masters. Lacking working forces, the French government makes a partnership with the Maison Regis, an important slave shipping company, so that it will be delivered a brand new batch of working force. After hopelessly trying to recruit those men, those women and children in Senegal, Cabo Verde, Guyana, and other countries of the coast, the Maison Regis arrives in the Kingdom of Congo, an immense country that includes in its times the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Zaire, and the Republic of Congo.
The Maison Regis was in competition with the other slave traders who furnished Cuba, Puerto Rico, and all these countries in which slavery was not abolished. And the main competitor was Cuba. Cubans received 100,000 Congo when West Indies received 20,000. All this took place in the slave market of Boma, which is in the mouth of River Zaire.
C'était au marché aux esclaves de Boma, qui se trouve à l'embouchure du Zaire.
Nevertheless, they had to be very careful because the English government was keeping an eye on them. The British probably did not appreciate the economical progress France was obtaining compared to the ancient American colonies that had become independent and therefore of no financial interest. The United Kingdom therefore made sure that France would respect the abolition of slavery. The Congos arrived in the West Indies. The French government had them sign employment contracts.
It was trade, there is no doubt about that, and the government has always been categorical about this fact. It was undisguised and unhidden trade. So to make it look real and illegal, the French government had imagined a trick.
Pour que ça fasse vrai, pour que ça fasse juridique, le gouvernement français avait imaginé un truc.
They had a right to keep their names. Boats arrived at Fort de France in Martinique. tract was mentioned, naturally the name, but also the village of the origin and the region. The people who arrived before the abolition of slavery are slaves. Thus in our Caribbean islands that suffered slavery, it is the identity, the research of the identity. We speak about these Congos because they arrived from 1857 on, and we can follow their tracks.
Thanks to the British that verify everything, the new deported will be able to keep their surnames. They are officially free men, freely hired. And officially, they are new slaves meant to be exploited.
My advisor, who was a unilingual Creole speaker, said to me one day, "That means I know somebody who speaks language." Then I said to him, "Does this person speak Creole?" He said to me, "Yes, this person speaks Creole, but he also speaks another language." From this point, it really struck me, and it became a real expedition because he took me there where this person lived.
Yes.
I recorded him.
Yes.
I had come with Mr. Savigny of the Diamant.
It was his parents who were deported, but he was born here. He bought this ground from Mr. Gabriel Hayat,
with whom he maintained excellent relations.
That's right. Yes, absolutely.
I know people who know him and how he lived. He took care of Mr. Hayat's oxes. And it seemed he owed his longevity to a lot of cow's milk which he drank. Somebody told me that her mother would have been born on a boat during the transfers. It is what they had said to me, and that his grandmother would have hidden him so that they would not count him as a slave. That's what I heard.
And then we have a cousin who is much older than us. Not very long ago I asked her the question, and she confirmed to me that the grandmother of our grandmother was deported.
Son of Musala and Mukambo Amelia.
Et de Mokambo Amelia.
1874.
I'm going to look for the photo album.
So there, it is your grandmother, the mother of your mother. Wow! I'm Mbasse René, because my mother was called Tijon Congo. I'm Clotaire Mbasse. I have Congolese origins. I was paid by the University of Montreal to collect Creole traditions. I began to collect many Congo words and tales when I met Madame Mbasse. Madame Mbasse. She was the widow of Anikel Mbasse, son of Charles Mbasse, who was a Congo disembarked, possibly a Batake. And she was a descendant by her father of Adrian Namusi of Congo, and by her mother she was a descendant of a Ibos nigger. And she sang me a song which her father sang when he arrived here, and he arrived in 1858. It went something like this.
Sugula Malonga, Sugudje, Sugudje, Ponna Butula, Sugudje, Sugudje. Puis d'autres mots dont j'ai oublié.
The grandfather of my mother's side is also a Congo. My name Tula comes from Jeremy Tula. He was born in the Riviere Salé, but is also a descendant of Congo. Congo's débarqués. It is a term which we give to people born in Africa. Especially my grandmother Lucilia, she was very proud. You know, in this period, we claimed absolutely nothing. We followed. My grandmother was very proud of her grandfather, who naturally did not read or write. He had placed her in a wealthy family in the neighborhood so that she could learn to read and write. And when he noticed that she was only serving as a maid, he took her back, saying that he did not put his child there to serve as a maid, but to learn reading and writing. He eventually got her back, but my grandmother naturally never learned to read or write. This Yakiza family that we met in the Grand Morne, a girl from this family said to me, I am proud to know that I come from Congo. And the main thing is that I arrived in this country free. I was not a slave. I was maybe a slave over there, but here in Martinique, I've arrived free, and I'm a Yakiza lady.
Upon their arrival in the West Indies, Congos are treated as slaves by the colons and rejected by former slaves that became Creoles and free.
Generally, the one who was the blackest was the one put aside. I want to know why people reject each other. It is a question which maybe has no answers, because I think that humans are like that.
We have the explanation. It is easily understood after Lynch's speech.
In the year 1712, a famous speech would completely disrupt the relationships between slaves among themselves. William Lynch's speech. The verb to lynch actually comes from his name. In this speech, he explains to the masters, owners of plantations, all of them pro-slavery, how to keep a perfect divisions among Negroes so that they will never unite and will even reject each other. It will oppose all the existing characteristics. It will oppose black Negroes to fair ones, fair Negroes to darker ones, those who have frizzy hair to those with straight hair, the youngsters to the elders, and vice versa, the men to the women, and so on.
He said, I guarantee you that this technique is going to make way during more than 3 centuries, and even today, this is in our history, in our people. It is not just between Creoles and Congos.
Ceci est dans notre histoire.
Children, it was like that at school. They annoyed us. Congo, Congo, Congolo, Congo. We fought because of that.
They suffered a lot of the attitudes of the others.
They did not play with us. That's all the children played with me at school. No, I do not play with her. I do not play with her. Then, if unfortunately they touched me, they would make an ugly face and go and wash their hands. My grandmother, who did not like blacks, said, "What is this all about?"
These Africans, these natives of Africa had another status, and the ancients, the descendants of slaves, had difficulty admitting. I think that these Congos, these Negroes, had another status than them. The Congos were denigrated, but were very proud to be Congos. My mother was proud. I remember when I took the high school diploma, she attached her head and ran in all the districts saying, in this period, in 1957 we were, I think 3 of us to get the high school diploma in Toisile. So it was a huge pride for her. At first, when they married, they did not speak French. They had to adapt themselves to pronounce the language as the Creoles, which already spoke French and Creole. They had to make an effort. For example, if something was called bidon, as they did not know how to pronounce the letter I, he would say boudon. The word was deformed. And people would point at them. This guy is Congo. Congos were even lower because they arrived directly from Africa and because all the others were already Creoles. So they see the Africans arrive as savages as they compete for the work. Concerning the purification, there were no toilets, so people threw their excrements in the river and in the sea, and the bridge was called Bridge Poo, because people threw in their excrements. So it was already pejorative, because the district was called Bridge Poo. But because it was the descendants of Congos who lived there, it was even more pejorative, because these people were considered as Africans, blacks, ugly, the lowest social category in the municipality. and it was contemptuous to say that we were from the bridge pool and that we were Congos. These people were considered as Africans, but Africans as a pejorative term. England watches France, and England did not stop saying that France was re-establishing slavery. So to be sure that these Congos were not slaves, they had to pay off the price of the travel. The Maison Regis advanced the price of the repurchase. The daily salary of Congo was 160 francs, so it was necessary for them to make over 200 workdays to pay off, because they had a contract of employment which had to last 10 years. They had to leave at the end of these 10 years. Not only did they have to pay off, but there was a restraint on their salary to plan the return travel. They died in debts towards the plantation on which they were. I have example of African immigrants who still owe money to this day, 2,200 work days in the plantation on which they were. And I'm talking about 1,872. So normally they would have had to end their slavery period 10 years later, but they were always engaged. They understood that they had been deceived. What we had promised them, nothing had been respected. Let us not forget that we are a few years away from the abolition of slavery, and so it is always the same story, always the same behavior.
Fooled by the French government, rejected by the population, the Congos will impose themselves on three major social conflicts that will shake the island between 1870 and 1925.
As soon as they arrived here, they played an important role in the political sector and in the social sector. Often during strikes, in the various texts which we studied, we saw that Congos put themselves first in line, and that the Creoles, those who've been in Martinique for a longer time, let's not say they hid themselves behind, but they gladly left these Congos, who were a little dreaded in the first line.
After the insurrection of the South in 1870, the rebellion of Lefrançois and the War of Le Diamant in 1925, the Congos will progressively reject their own origins. They want to be part of the Creole population, which shows too much hostility.
The rapid integration of Congos in the Creole community. You realize that in the third generation, there are already Creole Negroes, which is not the case for Indians, for example, who remain locked in their community.
There are those who deny, who do not want to accept it, and I assure you I can speak about these names of Congo origin or about African origin with people from Martinique who have and don't want to accept. You can tell them and show them with pieces of archives, they still do not accept it. Me? No, I don't have African origin, and even less Congolese origin. My name? Oh, it's the name they gave me, but in reality it was given to the wrong person who doesn't have African origin. There are people who refuse their origin.
The Kikasa, the Mayolika, Zombi, the Ngoma, the Mbutu, the Mbasi, all these people know very well where they came from.
This progressive denial will lead to the almost total vanishment of the Congolese culture in Martinique. Though the first two generations lived together in the Mont Diamant, today tracks of the Congos in language, food or traditions are very hard to be found.
Kikongo was the language used by the slaves on the coast, because it is necessary to know that the slaves, as soon as they were piled up on the coastal regions, did not leave necessarily fast, so they could not stay months waiting for a sufficient number of slaves to risk the travel or to fill the boats. In the population, people say things, onomatopoeias, which are placed like that in a sentence. We have the impression that it is a joke. There is a word that is used in Creole. It is agulu, which means glutton. This word probably comes from the Kikongo word ngulu, which means pig. The Zenga or the Genga. This word, we still use it to speak about a hen or about a rooster. And a Genga is a young rooster in the speckled plumage, and in the Kikongo, it means a young man. Name of plants: Agoma, Mokoji, the Goomba, the Kankanbu, the Makanja, the Makoko are all words which were verified and which were effectively Kikongo words that we still use here. I looked for African words, and she said to me that her dad had never wanted to teach her the Congo language.
My grandfather? I don't know if my grandfather spoke Congo. I don't know because my father never spoke another language but Creole.
He said to me that there were at least 7 dialects just in his district, so it was very difficult to learn one, and why this one rather than the other one. Tracks are there. The municipality introduced a circuit which goes from the village to the district where my old grandfather lived, and which returns to the village. They make that every year. We, the Tula family, we fully agree that they call this circuit Track Kimbi Kombo, because we, the brothers and sisters, all claim this term of Congo. Tracks are also in the culinary sector. There are things which persist. For example, what we call the soup of Congo, which consists of French beans, masisi, metanga, pibukusu, sorrel, so in the culinary sector also, we inherited from all this.
Nevertheless, amongst his 20,000 deported Congolese, one family kept the tradition alive by still celebrating the Day of the Dead. We found them in Guadeloupe, and they are all represented by Marie-France Masambo.
I am Marie-France Masambo, but was born in Guadeloupe. I am a descendant of a Congolese family, 4th generation. His name was Anatole Masambo, and when he arrived here, he was 17 years old. It is him who made his family. People from Guadeloupe, I am also Guadeloupean, go to the cemetery for the All Souls Day. But we don't go to the cemetery. We celebrate in our way here. It is called at home Grappa Congo. Today, I inherited the Grappa Congo from my mother, but my mother got it from her mom, which got it from hers. I say thanks to my mother for having shown me all this, but I fight even more than her, really, because I'm really determined to make people understand. As we say at home, sai tau tau, what you got is what you have. When you are Congo, you are set apart, you are Congo, but today it is Congo which makes my personality. I travel, I go everywhere, but thanks to my title of Congo. I say to my 2 children, you must be proud to be Congo. You are Congos even if you were born in Guadeloupe. There are many people around me who tell me it's a pity my name is Marie-France. They should have called you Marie-Congo. Oh, Marie-France. It is here I organize, I put the sound system, multicolored lights, and then there is an impressive crowd. It begins at 9:30 p.m., but there are people who are not ashamed to come at 4 p.m. They stay in their cars, they are everywhere. They crush all this, they walk on plants, always fight for Congo. I am 1,000 kilometers, but I fight for Congo. I fight. I am Congolese. I was born in Basse-Terre, but I am Congolese.
And Marie-France went to Congo, on the very same shore from which her ancestor, Anatole Masambo, left from.
Oh, I cried. I could not believe. I said to myself that my old grandfather left from there to come to the West Indies. During hundreds of years, they always made me believe that my ancestor was Victor Hugo, or who knows what else. But now that I know who were my ancestors, it's different. Nobody taught us.
When you heard the declarations of the French president who said that Africa did not enter the history, even at the highest level of France, it's told that Africa did not enter the history, but Africa was the cradle of civilization, the cradle of science, the cradle of mathematics, the cradle of culture, the cradle of arts, the cradle of music. So it's very hard when we develop this theory that the Negro was lower, that he was a savage, he was an animal. It's very hard to rectify and to show the wealth of these civilizations.
We ignore everything and we try to discover by ourselves.